Welcome back to the Salt Lick Worldwide Podcast, where we tackle the toughest topics in hunting, fishing, and conservation while trying not to get banned. Today, we're here talking about a topic so screwed up, even Joe Biden himself couldn't mumble his way through it. Red snapper regulations and shark depredation. Fishing in Florida these days is like trying to run a business under a Democrat administration. High taxes, stupid regulations, and someone's always trying to take what's yours. One minute you've got a nice snapper on the line, and the next, NOAA shows up like the IRS, claiming that fish belongs to the government. Or worse, a lazy-ass shark swoops in like a welfare leech, taking your hard-earned dinner while demanding more protection. At this rate, we'll be handing them stimulus checks and calling it shark reparations before long.
Very nice.
See what I did there? And speaking of questionable decisions, let's talk about my guest today. We've got Oscar Maldonado, who I'm pretty sure only agreed to do the podcast so he can have an excuse to drink beer and yell about the government.
Absolutely.
Hey, Oscar.
What up?
And then we've got Captain Mike Murray, the man, the myth, the career-changing legend. If commitment issues had a mascot, it would be Mike. He started off fishing, then after getting tired of globetrotting, got a big boy job running a successful marine ventilation company, only to sell it to become a charter captain, only to later sell that to go back into marine ventilation. I fished with Mike all over the world, and if I ever go broke from offshore fishing, he's the reason why. So, folks, welcome to the podcast, and today, what is the deal? Are red snapper actually endangered, or is it just another example of big government screwing over hardworking Americans? Have we trained sharks to be professional grifters? And most importantly, how the hell do we fix this before we need a background check, a permit, and a federal tax stamp just to bait a damn hook? All right, Mike, first time on the podcast, welcome, and tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course.
Hope it's not the last. We'll see about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, like I said, I grew up fishing, went to school, got an engineering degree, sitting in a bar in Guatemala, a bar that you've been to with me, by the way, and decided one day I needed to grow up and use that degree, so I did.
Shout out to Casa Vieja.
Yeah. Long live Dave. He may rest in peace. So, decided to leave fishing. That was in 2001. Went and worked for an engineering company doing marine engineering work and loved it, and left, started my own company, sold it, like you said, went back into fishing. So I'm more on that quit fishing twice.
Right.
And then as soon as my non-compete, the 5-year compete was over, got back out again. But I still tournament fish. I fish all over the world, thank goodness. Still have enough street credit to get invited to go do stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much it,
Well, and you hunt as well. You're not just a fisherman, you also hunt.
No, I know. I cannot play golf because you can't do all three of those. So
No, that's also true.
I've been golfing twice. I was just looking in the ponds at the ducks and the fish. That's all I wanted to do. So
Understandable.
Yeah, that's fair. That sounds like something Oscar would do.
I've been kicked out of many a golf course.
Ew.
Tarpon fishing at 6 a.m. is frowned upon, apparently.
Is
yeah,
it?
there's one down south where I used to wear a hard hat because it was right in the driving range there, but it was great.
It's frowned upon, huh?
I guess so.
Like FWC or just the HOA or
Just a guy in a golf cart just being like, you can't do this. I'm just like,
Guy wearing polyester
yeah,
pants.
there's always a there that's gonna.
I'm like, but these freshwater tarpon are smashing shiners right now, sir. What am I supposed to do?
Yeah, go back and do your starter job. Don't come here and bully me.
I was like, first tee time's at 7:30. I'm going to be gone in an hour. Don't worry.
Yeah. Off, Dick. All right, well, let's dive into this a little bit. So this is definitely a hot topic issue. We talked about it a little bit. Everybody talks about it. I've witnessed it firsthand. You've certainly witnessed it firsthand. Oscar, obviously, too. It's getting kind of out of hand, and it's also, the shark thing's definitely out of hand, but the snapper thing's also bullshit, in my opinion.
Complete and utter.
Yeah.
Yeah, complete and utter.
Yeah, so, understanding red snapper regulation. So red snapper, for the most part, are regulated by NOAA. And, they are responsible for managing marine resources, including red snapper. So supposedly their decision to limit or eliminate red snapper season is based solely on scientific assessments and stock evaluations.
Yep. Let me tell you a little story about that.
Please do.
6 years ago or so, we were fishing on 6 Mile Reef right in front of Stewart there, 75 feet of water. So
What number specifically?
yeah. So
it's that 60-foot number.
yeah. So anyhow, you've got the Donaldson Reef, which is about 3 miles offshore. It's a big artificial reef area. And then you've got basically no man's land between there and 6 Mile. And it goes from about 55 feet of water down to about 78 or so. And then the reef comes back up to 70. And Pat Price, who used to run Daymaker charters, unfortunately passed away during the big, He and I were sitting there chit-chatting on the radio, which is all charter captains ever do. And there was a big boat, looked like an Alaskan crab boat inshore of us, about a mile or so. And so we finally got the guy on the radio, and we're like, hey, hey, what are you doing? And he says, oh, I'm doing sampling for NOAA. I said, oh, what are you sampling? He says, well, we're dropping pots for lobster, for snappers and groupers to do a stock assessment. And we were like, well, buddy, you see the two boats east of you, you're way out of line. I said, you're in the middle of the desert. You're not going to see anything. I said, incidentally, how long are you soaking those pots? His answer was 45 minutes. So they're throwing pots in clear, barren sand and not seeing anything, and then saying, oh, there's none there. When meanwhile, as we did a lot, you could go to a place and you could bait up a 3-hook chicken rig and come up with 3 red snappers over and over and over. And that's the type of thing that, which is why we now have a 1-day season with 1 fish per person, which is a waste of time. And it's just bad science. And it's not limited to red snappers. This ties into the shark thing too, believe me. But they go with this, bad science, and the recreational and the commercial fishermen too suffer for it. The Southeast Atlantic Council, which governs both of us, the commercial and which I stride the fence there. I commercial fished as well. We're getting shafted big time with the situation with the red snapper, with the mismanagement, and just no other way to call it anything else. It's a lie. The further north you go from Stewart, where I live, the worse it gets. The kingfish guys in Canaveral are catching them trolling for kingfish. I've got a very good friend, guy travels all over the world like I do now. He used to be a boat captain, and he got into spearfishing. He lives in Savannah. So he had a bug to go get the world record red snapper on a pole spear. And it's like 25 pounds, a big one. And he was telling me what he does. He goes to the towers there and shoots a barracuda or two, fillets them, chunks them up, and then goes to this spot. He says it's not a wreck, it's natural bottom, 160 feet of water, and starts chumming. He said within 15 minutes, you'll have a red cloud of red snappers up to about 10 or 12 pounds. He said, but after a while, you see the big ones down below them. But the point is, 160 some feet of water, you've got red snappers gravitating up to the surface. And he said, as far as you can see in every direction is red snappers. So that's the same story all the way as far as you can go their range. They are everywhere. There's tons of them. And, the only reason that we can, the way the snappers are managed in the Gulf, I don't know if you're aware of this, but there are what they call snapper barons. So they've taken the commercial quota, and there's, I think, I don't know the exact number, but it's 3 or 4 companies own the snapper quota, snapper and grouper quota in the Gulf of Mexico. So if you want to go be a commercial snapper grouper fisherman, you have to pay them. You have to fish through them. You have to lease quota from them. You have to basically be a serf. And they get all the fish proceeds, obviously, and then they pay you. So say if you're getting $6 a pound, whatever, you get $2 or $3 or whatever. So
it's the snapper mob is what it is.
It's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. And there's a lot of rattlings that they're trying to do that on the Southeast fishery as well. And they've lumped some other fish in there, the vermilion snappers, triggerfish, things like that, things, fish of value. And, what it's done in the Gulf is it's really curtailed the ability of the mom and pop commercial fishermen from being able to survive. I grew up as a kid. I probably shouldn't say this, but in New York, on Long Island, digging clams. My brothers and I, we had a clam boat. We'd go out there, and after school, I could go make $40 or $50, and all summer long, I was digging clams. There were thousands of us. You could walk from boat to boat. It was almost like the law. As a little kid that lived on the bay, you had to go do that. Well, that's gone now. And it's gone because now they're farming clams. They're getting clams from polluted water, and they bring them to clean water, and they clean out, but just big industrial clamming. And the crazy thing about it is, I still talk to the guy who used to sell clams to you. Guy looked just like Phil Collins. Anyway, spitting image. Yeah, every time I hear Phil Collins, it makes me think of it. But anyway, he's still paying the same amount for the clams that they were when I did it in 1987, which is incredible. I was paying, I had a Cadillac Coupe de Ville back then and a 79 Caddy.
Of course you did.
It was enormous. It was fantastic. Anyway, but gas was like 85 cents, 89 cents a gallon. Now I can't imagine, getting paid the same amount you were 40 years ago or something that, and when your expenses have quadrupled or more, but that's kind of a conspiracy theory, but it's the only one that really makes sense. And the government, maybe not now with Doge tearing stuff up, but, the government is angling towards this deal where it's just big business. It's kind of no different from from Blackstone buying up private homes. It takes the average fisherman who's got a small commercial boat and just takes it away. I mean, as it is, a snapper grouper permit in Southeast Atlantic is over $100,000.
Wow.
So you can't get into it. If you've got a permit, it's an investment,
Whew, my butthole just puckered up right there.
I'm sorry. I get all fetched up when I start talking.
Wow, I get red faced. Are you sure you don't want to run me before we get too far into this? Holy sh!
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So, man, we already went down a rabbit hole.
Bring it.
Welcome to the podcast, folks. Have you met my Yankee buddy Mike? Oh, okay, so there's also let's dive back because I didn't realize that was happening in the Gulf with the snapper barons. That's what you call them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And is that's a permitted thing through some government agency where they?
Yeah, so these guys own portions of the quota, and there's no quota, so there's no Oscar and I go buy a 34-foot commercial boat and we go out there and we bandit rig hydraulic or electric reel fish and try to catch. We can do that, but we have to do that like I said, as indentured servants under these guys,
Wow,
it's crazy.
I've never understood either on the Atlantic side, because you do hear like people in Canaveral catching red snapper on topwater. They just chum them up, and you'll look it up on YouTube, and they're catching
no different than a yellowtail,
15, 20 pound red snappers on topwaters.
Yep.
It's the wildest thing.
And I've got a lot of buddies. I had bought that charter boat, my last charter boat, from Ponce Inlet and, up there just north of Canaveral. I've got a lot of buddies that still fish out of there, and we talk all the time. And, traditionally, the mangrove snapper fishing up there was phenomenal. And I'm talking about 10-pound plus mangroves.
Good
giant,
mangroves, yeah.
I mean, huge mangroves. And great gag and scamp groupers and just phenomenal bottom fishing. Well, it's all red snappers now. You can't hardly catch anything else because of the quantity of red snappers there. And it's crazy. The government recently came out with a proposal to do this was insane, a moratorium on bottom fishing in Florida. This was a few years ago. And they cited the fact that so many red snappers, that the mortality of red snappers released was a little bit higher than they anticipated. Well, it begs the question, why is that? And they said, well, we've never counted this many red snappers before. So because there's so many red snappers, yes, more are getting killed. You know what I mean? It's kind of, it's kind of like the whole, TikTok snippet, taking clickbait. You can take a piece and manipulate the data, and it's garbage. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. There's so many of those things, and it's just a mess. It's an absolute mess. And again, we're going to get into it with the sharks, but we did this with the sharks. Mm-hmm. Government regulation did this with the sharks, and it goes back to the 90s, the early 90s, and they've messed up the sharks. And I don't want to be anti-shark. Every sharks are. Here's another good clickbait comment. The sign of a good environment is a healthy shark population. I agree, but this is ridiculous. I mean, there's days where you cannot get a good bottom fish. Go off Jupiter, Florida, and pull your boat out of gear. You don't have to have bait in the water. You don't have to bang on the water. You don't have to do anything. Pull up to the edge, 120 feet of water or 110 feet of water. Pull your boat out of gear. And you will see dusky sharks, bull sharks, Caribbean reef sharks, tiger sharks, sandbar sharks, lemon sharks. It's incredible. And it's incredible. And then that is purely from the operations there in Jupiter doing shark dives and chumming every single day. And they had the balls to lie about it, saying that they didn't chum. And then when they featured those schmucks on Shark Week, there's the guy standing in the water and the little chunks of red meat coming down past him. They're chumming bonitas. I mean, I know the guy that used to sell them bonitas. I said, what are you doing? You're shooting yourself in the foot, for a few bucks. But
is Alex still fishing down there?
He is. Yeah, he is.
That's who. See, we lost an opportunity there. I could have had him remote in and tell us some of his stupid stories.
Yeah. I mean,
not that his stories are stupid. I'm just talking about the shark part of the story. Alex is a good guy.
My son will go fish with him when he's home from college every now and again. And, I'll ask, how'd you do? What'd you catch? And then they said, well, we went to the edge and we probably hooked 6 or 7 quality fish and didn't get any of them. And it's amazing. Tiger sharks. I remember seeing a tiger shark off of Jupiter, off of Palm Beach was very rare. I remember the first one I saw was eating a sea turtle. I thought it was the coolest thing I ever saw. There are now resident populations of tiger sharks. The sandbar shark is protected. And that's really the fish, the shark on the reefs that really winds up getting most of our reef fish are sandbar sharks in the deeper water, especially, over 100 feet. There's tons of them. They're protected.
Yeah, and we're going to get to that. That's one of the protected species. No, you're good. Well, something you and I talked about too prior to putting this together for show notes. I didn't realize. So there's the snapper season. I fish off the East Coast, and that's what I've always done. I have fished off the Gulf a little bit, the Gulf of America, but not often. But so there apparently, and I'm looking at the from NOAA and FWC. It appears that it's starting, let's see, several months with open weekends, a bag limit of 2 fish per angler per day. The season typically lasts from Memorial Day through the end of the year.
Yes.
Meanwhile, on our coast, we get 1 day and 1 fish.
So, yeah, and a lot of the reason why that fishery is managed so differently is because the Gulf states, Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, and I think Florida participated in too, is NOAA tried to pull the same BS, saying that they were doing sampling. This goes back quite a few years. They were doing sampling, but they were doing it over sand. And they said, well, you need to do sampling over wrecks and reefs and artificial, because there is a huge program. You can actually get a permit to make a reef. You can go sink stuff.
I like it.
Yeah.
It's like a deer feeder.
Yes, it is. So anyhow, so they went ahead and they did their own research. And the numbers were like an order of magnitude different. So they kind of forced them to, like, hey, the biggest charter fleet in America is in Destin, Florida. And those guys, they were fighting for their livelihoods because, if they didn't have that, they would, there's so much, and still they only have it at a limited amount of time. But they went ahead and forced that to change. Unfortunately on the East Coast, and it's getting less there, more and more. I mean, I didn't keep my charter boat just because it was going to be so much of a pain and paperwork and everything. There's not a lot of guys comparatively, and there's not a lot of people fighting for it. So, there's a viable fishery there, and you can, as a charterman, you could say, okay, well, we have season starting Memorial Day or June 1st and whenever it opens, and it's weekends, and let me book these trips, and I can do specialty trips. For me, when I had my charter boat, the one year they didn't tell us about the season until the week before.
I remember that you and I were planning on fishing it,
and I'm sitting there waiting because it's at that time it was a 5-day season. Gosh, I wish we had that now. And for a 5-day season, I would run 3 trips a day because it was usually in the summer. So I would do a trip early in the morning. Everybody get on a boat just before first dawn, run out there. You can only catch one. I mean, I would literally take people to a spot up north. It was a pretty good run from Stewart, but it was worth it. Everybody lined up. I had an inspected boat, so I had 10 or 11 people on the boat. They would drop. Everybody would hook up. I would see who didn't get a red.
That was one of those Fort Pierce numbers, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, somebody, that guy caught a big lane. That guy caught a vermilion. I'd be like, all right, everybody else stay in. You two guys drop again. Boom. All right, let's go somewhere else where we can avoid these things till we have to go in. And that was what we did. But, then there was years where they announce it less than a week in advance, and then they say it's 1 day, and it's hard to get people to get excited about that, and it just, Murphy's Law the last few years, the weather's been atrocious, so it's just a mess,
Yeah. Well, and frankly, the 1 day season, I fished the 1 day season before. I think you had a chart. I was actually fishing not with you. I had my boat. You had your boat. There were several other people out there. It looked like the Redneck Yacht Club out there. Mm-hmm. There were so many people on the water.
Yep.
You couldn't, and like I said, most of those guys, they're weekend warriors. They fish a few times a year. They don't know where the good bottom is. So, they're going to go hit the man-made stuff that's marked, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're not going to know where the good bottom is. So I never had a problem with it. But at the same time, it's fun to watch the boat ramp, though.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
If you want to have a good time, get you a six-pack and a lawn chair. Just kick back there and just watch the bullshit that goes on there.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, that's good stuff. So, and here's the thing then. So, NOAA's got this new thing that they proposed. It's called Amendment 59. Okay, so now in my research, this amendment aims to adjust management measures for red snapper. This could lead to even tighter restrictions, including the closure of bottom fishing entirely in certain areas. Many in the fishing community oppose these changes, arguing that they are based on flawed assessment rather than real world observation.
Yeah, I think Amendment 59 encompasses 55 species of bottom fish. Yeah, and I think it goes from north of Fort Pierce or Canaveral, I think, to the state line, which, like I said, those guys up there, Ponce North, those guys, they make their living bottom fishing. It will get squashed, especially with this administration now. You know, with Don Jr. being an outdoorsman, it'll get squashed. But just the fact that they're trying this, it's just it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, and then going back to it, and this is actually so, and I will cite my sources on this podcast. I normally don't, but because this is kind of several reports. I mean, it's widely reported that from fishermen, both commercial and recreational fishermen, the abundance of red snapper, contradicting NOAA's data suggesting that continued overfishing is happening. I've seen it firsthand. Yahtzee, baby. I know what that is. Uh-oh.
Gotta stay hydrated.
That's right. Yeah, it is. It is a little warm in here. Well, and you're not a camel. You don't have a hump on your back to store it either.
Exactly.
So. But, so the big bitch I'm getting from during the research is that NOAA's assessments, their assessment methods they rely on limited surveys rather than real-time angler reports. And frankly, most of the data they're gathering is from the area where there's not normally fish.
I've got a really good buddy that has a grouper snapper permit. I tried to get him to come here today. He had a conflict, but we were just talking the other day about, he seems to get the random observer pretty much every quarter, which is, they like going on his boat. It's a very nice boat. And, so he was up way north, snowy grouper fishing, deep water. And he said on the way home, he swung through and went over one of the numbers where, he said there's usually a bunch of snappers, and it was a big giant dome. And he said to the observer, it says, all right, you want to make a drop here? I want to show you something. So he took 2 banded rigs and dropped 8 hook rigs and brought up, I think, like 15 red snappers. And of course, they want to do measurements and everything. So the biologist is sitting there and they've got a bunch of fish flopping around in a basket. And he was like, drop them again. And they did it again. And they did it again. So he's just trying to prove a point, but it falls on deaf ears. It's such a Leviathan. NOAA is such a giant mess that it's so compartmentalized. Nobody really knows what's going on. Nobody really knows, it seems like every issue, the whole right whale thing. Ugh, it's terrible.
Well, that was, and I'll digress a little bit from this story to tell you this one. I think you already know it. Had some friends from South Africa down. And so we were offshore fishing at that 160 number that we had out there. And we get pulled over by FWC. And we had didn't have a limit of anything, but several of lots of species. There was, there were vermilion, there were lanes, so on. Good bite that day. They both had their fishing licenses. We bought those, make sure everything was good. Boat was already Coast Guard certified, so we didn't have to worry about that. And there was an older FWC officer and a younger guy. Younger guy jumped on the boat and he's kind of looking around. He's like, "Oh man, you guys are good." And the older guy on the boat says, "No, you got to measure every one of those fish." He's like, "They're big. Like they're." Yeah. He measures every one of these fish. He finds a single lane snapper that is an 1/8 inch short. That obviously somebody, because we were in a great lane bite, so I'm just throwing them back, right? If borderline, don't worry about it, we're going to catch some more. Somebody threw one in the damn bucket. Okay, that shit happens, right? Which is why in charter boat, the mate's the guy that does that.
Oh, yeah.
Or the captain and not the charter client, because you don't want to fuck around with that.
Oh, I've had some arguments with them over,
right?
Regulations.
So time was said and done, he finds one fish, and Mike Sumner was with me. And he's like, "Okay, well, I'm going to write you guys a ticket." And he kind of takes our information down. And I think he gives us this little, I don't even remember. It was this little thing. Like several weeks later, we got a certified mail from NOAA. And I'm like, wait a minute. And so apparently we were in international waters. And I should have told the FWC officer to go f*** for lack of a better term.
No. They have a cooperative program.
Oh, do they?
Yes, they do. They're going to get your money. So, and I think they split the fine. I don't quote me on, well, I've said it, whatever, but I'm not sure if that's the case. But, Florida state waters on the East Coast extend 3 miles. And when you're outside Florida state waters, well, they have no jurisdiction.
Right.
But I've been stopped dozens of times by these guys 8 miles, 10, 12 miles offshore.
Well,
And I asked the question one day, I'm like, hey guys,
we were at 6, so we were
yeah,
that out of that
I'm
6
like,
mile.
guys, aren't you out of your jurisdiction? And I had a good relationship with those guys. I said, I'm not trying to be a wise ass, but how are you guys stopping me out here? And they told me, they said, well, we have a cooperative program with NOAA. So if we find an infraction, you will get, and you experience this, you will get a notification from NOAA. And I was like, how does it benefit you? And then he just looked at me. I was like, oh yeah, I see how that works.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's nothing like putting an impetus to try and get some.
And to me, it was ridiculous. By the time it was said and done, we both had to provide a formal response, which was exactly the same. Like, look, I've had a offshore saltwater fishing license for 20 plus years. I've never had an infraction. Yada yada yada. And the response was, okay, we understand it was a mistake. Just don't do it again, and no fine, no anything. Like,
right.
Okay, no, but do they have any jurisdiction to actually impose a fine?
So
that's the question.
They sort of do.
Walk me through this.
Well, like I said, I have been stopped by FWC occasionally where they had feds on board.
And I want to make this clear too. I threw FWC under the bus earlier. I do not dislike FWC. My neighbor's actually FWC, and I have a good relationship with a lot of guys. There was a on that boat that day, and there was a good officer on the boat. And there's a difference. That's the difference between doing your job and trying to look for something that's wrong.
100%.
Just to be
100%. I agree 100%. Now, when I had the charter boat there, those 5 years, there was 3 that I dealt with all the time. There's a guy named Eric, there's a guy named Mike, there's a girl named Meg, and they were great. And you know what? We were friends, and they would come and check my boat all the time, and they would check the fish, and and I would break their chops and everything because I'm a Rod Yankee. And but we had a good time. I always had everything out for them. I had a folder with all the licenses, everything was in place, and it was great. They were decent people. Now, I did hear that there was, after I sold the boat and got out, that there was a guy that had a hard on for charter guys and did some pretty shady stuff. One boat, I won't say who it was, but one boat had they had a dolphin in a box. They didn't have a federal dolphin permit, which is a big no-no. But and his mate also had a captain's license, so he wrote 2 fines, which is not right, But that guy lasted, from what I understand, about 6 months. Enough people rattled the cage that.
Well, and so that was the issue on my boat, right? So Mike Sumner, who also has his captain's license too, he wasn't the captain of that boat. That was my fucking boat. They wrote him a ticket too because he was a licensed captain.
Hey, you're not supposed to do that. I mean, that's like, how can you have 2? It's one fish. What, you guys both? Are you guys wimps? You can't catch an 8-inch weight?
No. We caught it on each other's chicken rig at the same time, kind of thing. It was
whatever you want to do. Bring that shit to Miami Beach, pal.
Right, it's just stupid. I've never, and like I said, you and I've crossed several times together. We fished the Bahamas all the time, and we've for the most part, we've had I've never had, with the exception of that, I've never had a bad experience with FWC. To include deer hunting, to include waterfowl, everything else that we do, freshwater here, never had a bad experience. There's always been super nice guys, and that particular officer, I thought he was great. It was this old grumpy guy that was fat and couldn't get his over the gunnel to get in my boat even if he wanted to. That was the one directing this, and it's ridiculous. These people are here fishing from South Africa. They just flew 15,000 miles to have a good time and experience our culture. They threw fucking small fish in the box, for sake. I mean, come on, guys. Really? Here's an idea. Throw it over board and say, okay, you can't keep that fish. I get it. And that was only something that the sharks didn't get that day. So, but so anyway, so Amendment 59, that's a big deal right now. Hopefully it's going to, it looks, everything I read does. I also agrees with you. And most people think that it's going to get squashed. So people, especially now during the Biden administration, though, there was a time though that was, hey, this could absolutely happen.
Oh, and that's where this came from. This was spawned out of that, that academia filled nonsense where people were making rules that never spent a day on the ocean in their lives. And it's not just that administration, but it seems to be the, I have a degree in, underwater basket weaving, and, I know what I'm doing, and da 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 da. It's garbage,
Well, that's the rely on the people that do it every day for a living, right? We've talked about it several times about hunting regulations and different states, or we had a guest from Canada on recently and some of their regulations, and they're not listening to the people in the field. The bureaucrats are making these decisions based on what some in an office in Washington D.C. tells them to do. they've never been out there. They've not seen it themselves. They've not,
No
witnessed
males first.
firsthand what's going on.
I will say this. You mentioned Canada. Prior to COVID, I used to go to Nova Scotia to go tuna fishing every year.
I remember the
Yeah,
videos.
3-4 weeks at a time, and it had a great time. And they have a rule there. Any foreigner, first of all, at that time, you could not keep a bluefin tuna. And these are, it's where the world record came from, 1,496 pounds. I mean, there's monstrous fish. So the charter guys there had to have, you had to use circle hooks, which I have no problem with. They had to be barbless, which you can't buy it. You have to smash the barb, and on and on and on. There's all these different, down to the size of the mesh of your herring net. It was very, very strict. And the one day it was glassy calm, and we were never more than we were fishing out of Prince Edward Island that year, and we were fishing anywhere from 2 to 10 miles off the beach, and in the Gulf of St. Lawrence. And the Fisheries department came out to check us, and they boarded the boat and they started pulling up the line. So we had live mackerels on, and one of the hooks had a bit of the barb still stuck up. It was mashed, but not totally. And they went full commando. They went nuts. They said they needed to take it, and I offered. I said, "You want me to take the fish up?" No. They cut the leader about a foot above the hook. They threw the whole shooting match into their boat, live mackerel and all, and they started hooting and hawing, and then they ripped the boat apart. I mean, they went through everything in the boat, rode up all these. I kept in contact with the guy who owned the boat, the captain, and found out later on, he beat the whole thing, because he said when he went to the magistrate there, and he said, "This is what I mashed the barbs with." And he showed his pliers. He's like, "So apparently I didn't mash the whole thing, but I made an attempt to. You're going to fine me because I didn't do a good enough job. So how do we govern this?"
If you can't buy the device that
Correct.
they mandate that you use.
Yeah, so I heard that. I'm like, "Woof, these guys are."
Yeah, I remember that. You used to send me video, and I was like, "Oh shit, I definitely want to go do that."
That's pretty awesome.
Damn right
Pretty
it
awesome.
is.
So
Yeah, well, let's talk about the shark thing. So, and that's a big thing. So, just to give everybody a little background, shark depredation is a huge deal in Florida, especially. Bahamas as well. I would say down in the Keys, they have a problem with it as well.
basically from the Texas-Mexico border to past Cape Cod.
Yep. So, and one of the things that sparked this, or that contributed to the sharks the way they are now, there was a policy passed. It was called the Shark Conservation Act of 2010, and it reinforced some previous bans on shark finning and expanded protections for many species. And from most people's opinion, that's what's led to the increased interactions with fishermen, because the population is now exploding.
Right. So we can back this up to the early 90s. In the early 90s, it became pretty evident that the swordfish, yellowfin, and big-eye tuna populations were getting beat up by longliners bad. So our friends at NOAA decided, you know what? Coastal sharks are an underutilized source of protein. So they subsidized some guys to change their gear to shark gear. And guys went shark fishing. And it was very lucrative. And obviously the fins were the most lucrative part of the whole deal. And in the beginning, and I don't think it was as big a deal in America as it was, or maybe still is in the rest of the world, but the carcass of the shark is worthless compared to fins. Fins are worth high dollar, and they don't take any room up. So they made an amendment pretty quick saying, hey, you got to have, for every set of fins, you got to have a body. And then, said it would still get some money for them. Mako sharks brought really good money. They're delicious. Thresher sharks are good to eat too. Black tip sharks are good to eat. So anyhow, there was a thriving shark industry going.
Fish are also good to eat.
I wouldn't know.
Just throwing that out there. I've heard.
Yeah.
I heard a guy.
But again, that's another example. They really were in bad shape. In 1990, they got protected, and look at them now. Now there's arguably, and there's too many arguably, but now they're saying, hey, pay for this permit. You can go take one. Seems like common sense to me. But that's FWC. That's not NOAA. So that we're taking the feds out of that. So the sharks took a beating, and they did. They were in bad shape. And so really the advent of Shark Week on Discovery really opened up the average person's eyes to what was going on. And some things were put in place to protect some sharks, as they needed to be. So we get back to the flawed science, and I'll focus on the sandbar shark. You know, as a kid in Long Island, we caught them. We called them brown sharks. They were usually 50 to 100 pounds, and we caught quite a few of them. And they are very prolific. They also have enormous fins for their size, like gargantuan. So they were targeted. So they're protected now. And now there's, I mean, schools of them everywhere. And I'm not just talking about Florida. You know, we're here in South Florida, but they are a menace all the way up the East Coast. So we brought it up again. Pat Price, he put a GoPro down on a rig on a live bait and hooked an amberjack. And within about 10 seconds, in that frame of view of that GoPro was a dozen sandbars, and you could repeat that on every wreck that you dropped on. And you know, it got to the point where, you know, I stopped fishing some of the wrecks just because I felt like I was hurting my own fishery stock by feeding these sharks. It was absolutely ridiculous. You know?
Well, it pisses the clients off too. You know, you as a charter boat captain, your job is to put fish in the boat. And, you know, there's nothing, you know, and I've seen it firsthand. We'll tell that story later about what happens when you get tired of getting sharked in the Bahamas. But
seeing a Buddhist,
it's coming out in this episode. But yeah, I remember, you know, we would go that inshore wreck and you know, for Goliath, and the amount of sharks there are just ridiculous.
So, you know, when I first moved to Florida in the early 90s, I charter fished, and you know, we would have a run. There would be runs of sharks. The black tip sharks would run on the beach in the wintertime, and masses of them. And honestly,
Spanish mackerel kind of runs, or
oh yeah,
really,
oh yeah, and that still goes on there. Like MacArthur Park, Singer Island, you see the aerial, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them.
No shit.
Yep. We used to go. It was really cool when we had a good hard east wind. We would get just outside the break, and pop the kite up, and fish a bait just outside the surf. Like we had to make sure our bait wasn't sitting by a surfer, and just pop the kite up just outside the surf. And because the spinner sharks, you know, they jump and spin, you know, the black tips and spinners, we would take 2 strands of number 4 wire, super light wire, put it in a drill and spin it up, and then twist that. And that was very supple. It couldn't kink it. It was like using cable, but it was smaller diameter. So we would do that and then hook these sharks with the charter clients who wanted to catch a shark, and they would jump and spin. It was great, you know, and they're not really an issue per se. And then in the springtime was when the bull sharks would show up, and we would catch them on the deep wrecks, 240 to 280 feet of water. 180. There was 3 wrecks. There was the Andy wreck. Then we just called them the 280 barge, the 240 barge.
Did it tighten out that far too? There was a tight. Is it?
No, Titan's is on 6 Mile.
On 6 Mile. Okay.
But here, you know, you have the at a Stewart, you have the Wickstrom wrecks, which are in 180 feet of water. Those, you know, that would be the type of thing where it would be, or the Rankin, which is 125. But so we had a really cool rig. Actually, we would take 10 feet of number 19 wire with an 18-0 circle hook, which is giant, a barrel swivel, 10 feet of 400 pound, and a 3-way swivel and a 3-pound lead, because you're in the bulk of the current there. We'd take a goggle eye and put it in his mouth and out his eye socket, so he had a good firm hold on it. We would drop that on the wreck, and the idea was you wanted to hook a rudderfish or an amberjack, preferably a rudderfish, because it was a smaller bait for the shark. But I don't know how the hell those fish got that 18-0 circle hook in their mouth, but the rod would be in a rod holder, and it would take, you know, you'd see it get bit, and then you would see the rod load up. And I would say to the captain, I was a mate at the time, be like, all right, we got him. And within 30 seconds, the rod would just bowl over, and you'd have a bull shark.
I've fished that wreck with you before, and, you know, specifically targeted amberjack, and we never got to put the rod in the holder. It was, you could feel it, you know, as you're dropping, right? So you're manually controlling, right, the drop, so you don't get backlashed, and then all of a sudden you just say, oh, that son of a bitch is just like, oh, lock her up, boys, and hold on.
But, you know, we would catch these sharks in the springtime, and they were big. They were 250 to 400, you know? And no, actually, you know, the coolest part of that was we'd fight the fish. They'd come up, and a lot of times cobias would come up with them. So I'd have a live bait, and we'd pitch. I caught a 60-pound cobia off the back of a bull shark one time doing that. That was pretty cool. But anyway, that's beside the point. But then they'd be gone. You know, a couple more months, they'd be gone. And the reason they'd be gone is because starting, I believe it was July 1st, the coastal longline season would open up, and there were some guys that would come in and set short gear for longline, 4 or 5 mile gear on the bottom to catch these sharks, and they were able to sell them. So fast forward now, you know, there's bad press about, you know, shark finning, and you see videos of a whitetail reef shark, which is endemic of like the Galapagos, laying there in the bottom, still breathing with no fins, which, is terrible. But that has nothing, nobody's doing that here. And people go out of their minds, So much like the Florida bear hunting, people were trying to do management with their heartstrings, and that never works. And, Colorado wolves, take your pick,
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. So, now everybody watches these shows on TV and they become an instant expert. And the minute you kill a shark, I mean, it's a fish. It's legal to kill a bull shark. It's legal to kill this one or that one. So, but marinas won't let you dock at their dock anymore with a shark. You can't kill a shark, and you can't do this, and you can't do that. And it's just, it went from them being in big trouble, which they were, to they're not in trouble anymore. There's tons of them, and sustainable management through sustainable take is not a dirty word. It's not like they're hopefully not going to waste,
No,
but,
that's called conservation.
Oh, absolutely.
That's exactly. I mean, that's no different than hunting. You're managing a resource at that point in time, for the greater good and for the longevity, not only for you and I, but for our kids and our grandkids and for future generations. And I think at this point in time, you'd think we were smart enough to be able to do that.
Well, we're not.
Apparently.
People are stupid. I'll give you an example. There's a guy named Tom Osborne, great guy, commercial fisherman, and he had one of the last permits. And it was in the news, and you'll know this story when I tell you about it, but he was setting his gear with an observer off of Jupiter, and one of those dive boats found it. Oh. And they took his gear.
Yeah,
They took his gear, balled it up, brought it back to the dock there in Jupiter, took photos, put it on there, and wrote all about the illegal longline gear and poaching, and they were heroes, and people were giving them accolades. Well, it's a felony to mess with a federally regulated fishery, and so they got charges against them. Unfortunately, in Palm Beach County, they got a slap on the wrist. They had to pay Tom back for his gear and this and that. But what made it worse was the lying. They claimed that they let go. Oh, there was, 15 Goliath groupers on there, and some were dead, and we let them go, and there were tiger sharks and hammerheads and blah, 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 blah.
Okay,
blah.
so
meanwhile, there's an observer with historical data,
Right. Well, and that I go back to, folks, I don't know if you need to go watch are your videos, some of the old grouper videos, the Goliath up on? Because, I mean, you did
I took it down.
But you did the grouper study where you had them, you actually brought them into the boat. And was that from FAU?
Oh, no, that was with Johnny Morris. Actually, he got a permit.
Oh, for Bass Pro.
Yeah,
right,
he got a permit to keep 4 of them for his Wonders of Wildlife.
But the idea that you can go down and take a grouper off of a line, that happen. And you're certainly not doing that with a shark. I mean, these things are massive.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that was sudden. That was over a decade ago now, right? But that was so cool though, bringing those things in and having them. And there's like this. Did you ever see this where Mike did this? So in the back of the boat, they put was it inflatable?
No, it was like a feed tank. It was like an 8-foot diameter by 3 feet high.
Like a swimming pool,
polyethylene pool.
Yeah, and in the back of the boat, and they were going to, how many were you supposed to?
4.
So they're going to the wreck, they're catching Goliath and transporting or putting them in the boat, and then from there they're going to Springfield or wherever they were going.
They went to Springfield, Missouri via Marathon Keys because there's a company. It was called, I think, Dynasty Fish Transport. So we would get back to the dock. We would transport them into their covered trailer with a medicated tank, pressurized tank. So then we'd go back out. We catch the second one the first day. And as soon as the second one got in the tank, those fellas tore ass down to Marathon to get them in their quarantine facility. It's just like when you have an aquarium, you get a new fish, you got to quarantine it. And they would throw them in there and medicate them or whatever. And I'll never forget, the next morning, I'm at the boat at dark 30 getting ready. And here comes the trailer just getting back from Marathon. They got down, got the fish situated, come back. And it was pretty cool. It was a pretty neat experience. And the biggest one was 385. The biggest deal was trying to get him up over the gunnel. Holy moly. There were 7 of us trying to muscle that thing. Yeah, you didn't want to hurt.
And it's dead weight too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Once we had this big cradle to put him in, so it was pretty cool. It was actually a Bill Dance show. They aired it on TV. Pretty neat.
Well, I know you were texting me as it was going on, taking pictures of these things. Yeah. It was, and we not. I mean, you can't harvest them. Like, what is the rule with Goliath grouper? You can hook them, but you cannot. You can't take them out of the water. Correct?
You only take them out of the water in an effort to like get gear off of them, which they all have.
Lots of it.
Lots of it. Yeah. But, that was pretty neat. So, because if you're Johnny Morris, you can get a permit, which apparently was only like a $20 permit or something like that.
Sean Kogut cannot get that permit. I will get. I'm gonna apply. And
You can now harvest them. You can kill them now, but it's very strict rules. I don't think you can do it in Martin County at all, and they have to be, I think, under 30 something inches long as those smaller fish. But it's something
for another episode.
Oh yeah,
For another episode.
maybe a field trip.
Yeah. All right. So, moving back into the shark thing, we got sidetracked there talking about the grouper fishing with Johnny Morris, and
I just showed him the pictures.
That was cool. Yeah, and we used to do that with Mike all the time. We, for a long time, that's how I met Mike. I started bringing employees out. So we, have a Saturday once a quarter, something like that, where I'd call Mike and he had a free weekend, so we'd bring the employees out. And one of the cool things to do was go there and get somebody, whoever the toughest guy was, right, that thought they wanted to try, and get them hooked up in the harness and go ahead and drop on one of these wrecks and hook up to a grouper.
Oh yeah, you think you're tough? Yeah, go against a 400-pound guy. Goliath.
That was good fun.
No, and you had a system too. That was
it worked pretty good
to get them out of there. Yeah.
It worked pretty good.
Yeah, but so going back in the shark thing, so a lot of one of the other things that I ran into is, so the thing with artificial reefs, right? So they've been introduced to spread out fish populations and create alternate fishing zones. And for the people that don't know, who I don't know how you don't know what an artificial reef is, because it's clearly in the title. But it's a man-made structure that serves as habitat for, red snapper and other species, potentially reducing overfishing in natural reefs. That's what they cite it as. However, critics have argued that artificial reefs may also attract more sharks, going into the shark thing. So turning them into feeding hotspots rather than safe havens for fish, this has raised concerns that sharks may be associating boats with anglers with easy meals, further increasing depredation rates. So what I took from that article was, I get that I call the artificial reef thing bullshit. I don't think we have more sharks because we have artificial reefs.
I agree with that statement 100%.
I do think sharks are smart enough to come up to a knowing that there's an easy meal coming, though.
Well, like I said earlier, okay, so if you go back, there's places in the world where there's been tons of sharks forever. Great Barrier Reef, St. Thomas, the North Drop, where everybody catches the blue marlins, and in the Bahamas, in the southern Bahamas. And like I said, if you go off of Jupiter right now and just change your RPM down to idle, from cruising to idle, sharks will come to the boat. Same thing in the Bahamas, same thing, all these places. Great Barrier Reef, it was always an issue about getting there, everybody's trying to catch giant black marlin. You had to try to get them quick and get them off the edge, because you're trolling right at the edge of the reef. They're really kind of a reef fish, for the most part, the black marlins are. You had to get rid of them fast, because the sharks would come and get them. It wasn't one, two. They'd be attacked by, they call them bronze whalers there. They look a lot like bull sharks, but they would pile on. Same thing, St. Thomas, bull sharks, duskies, I don't know, they're a whole different tigers. And that's open ocean open ocean deep water, oceanic white tips here. But same thing in the Bahamas, a lot of oceanic white tips, nasty shark. But that has changed and evolved to here. 15 years ago, you would hear about, like I say, after, I don't know how many sails I've caught between, I don't know, 8, 9, 10,000 sailfish, right? 8,000 sailfish. I think I've had 2 or 3 eaten at a time that I could see. And my buddies tell me now, because I'm not sail fishing anymore, that are doing it day in, day out there, Palm Beach and Jupiter, that a big chunk of the fish they're letting go are getting eaten after they get let go.
When they're just kind of a little lethargic tired, still and trying to get them back in the...
And they say, the people never see it because it happens 10 feet down. But, they'd be standing on the bridge watching a fish swim away, and all of a sudden, 2 or 3 bull sharks come and pile on it. That never used to happen. I can tell you that never used to happen. I spent enough time on the bridge watching fish swim away. They do learn. So now there's so many of them. It's not the April shark run anymore. Now they're there year round. And it's nonstop. More species. Like I said, tiger sharks out the wazoo now. White sharks. I mean.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
I'm going to use the word a lot, but I mean, I had one swim up to the boat up off Jensen Beach up in shallow water, like 60 feet of water, 65 feet of water. Last month, a friend of mine was fishing out of Stewart. He was running down a color change and saw 2 white sharks 100 yards apart. But 2, and he said they were 2,000 pounders, like real ones. It's nonstop, white sharks. A couple of years ago, I went up to Cape Cod to go tuna fishing.
That's a 6-meter fish, by the way. That's a big one.
No, it's not that big. It's not that big.
2,000 pounds?
Yeah, no.
So that's what is it? That's 6 meters is 18 feet.
Yeah, no, it's less than that. That's 2,000-pound fish, but 12 feet, 13.
So 4 meters.
Yeah, 3 or 4.
Little fish.
Little guy.
Okay.
An adolescent. Yeah, I went up to Cape Cod a few years ago to go fishing, and one of the guys I used to work for, he's from New Jersey, excellent fisherman. He was up there, and I called him and said, "What's going on?" He's like, "Got 2 white sharks today." So I immediately started calling him a Jersey sharker because I'm rodding and having a good time. So then I get up there, and we start fishing, and I catch a white shark. That's the only one I've ever caught on rod and reel. Actually, it's pretty cool, to be honest with you. But it was a young fish, like 500-600 pounds, So, of course, I became the New York sharker and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
The whole thing started. Still going on, by the way. But, I mean, we also caught poor beagle sharks on that trip. A poor beagle shark, for those that don't know, it looks like a cross between a Mako and a white shark. The guys in Maine used to call them Facos. They look like a fat Mako shark. And they're also very good to eat. But they used to be like a rarity. You'd only occasionally see them.
It's like a northern shark.
Yeah, very much so, yeah. But I'm using the poor beagle as an example. It's not just off of Florida. This is Cape Cod to Maine. There's guys saying that they can't tuna fish. They can't chum anymore because immediately they get inundated with sharks up there, blue sharks and poor beagles, Makos. But one guy said he caught 20-something poor beagles in a day, and there was like 5 or 6 guys that said that. And I was like, wow, that's kind of incredible. I was always kind of queer for those things because they were so rare, But we caught a handful of those that trip too,
I will definitely overlay a graphic right here because I have no clue what you're talking about.
What, the poor beagle?
Yeah.
The real way to tell a poor beagle is the base of his dorsal fin on the back has a white patch on it. Because otherwise you'd be like, oh my God, it's a little white shark. It looks like it looks like a fat Mako. But cool fish, nonetheless. Long Island, where I grew up, never heard of a sand tiger. Never heard of a black tip shark there. Never. We had, like I said, sandbar sharks. We had blue sharks, Makos, Breshers. But now with this new thing with the Menhaden up there, massive Menhaden schools all over the place. 2 people on Fire Island years ago got bit by sand tiger sharks. That's ridiculous. They were never there. And they're there now. People catch them constantly. Black tip sharks are in the surf eating the Menhaden. I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Again, it goes back to that sharks are a litmus for a good environment. The bait's back. These sharks are back. Ocean City, Maryland. I go up there in the summertime, fish a bunch of tournaments. Ocean City tuna tournaments in July. We usually fish anywhere from the Willington Canyon, which is off of Cape May, down to the Norfolk Canyon, which is off Virginia Beach. Historically, I lived there. I used to live there. I charter fished there, fished hundreds of days. Very rarely had a shark eat a tuna. Oregon Inlet in about the past decade have had big problems. A lot of times guys have to go catch 2 limits of yellowfins to catch a limit of yellowfins because they're getting eaten by the sharks before they can get them to the boat. And that's expanded. So first year was we went down to Norfolk Canyon. I'll never forget this day. We caught 13 yellowfins in a big eye. We put in the box. We had the one big eye we caught was a single bite. We got piled on by big eyes, which are bigger. Tunas are bigger, generally are bigger. We got piled on, and then Ronnie Fields was right next to us. He got piled on, and we lost every one of them. One pulled off, and all the others got eaten. And he had 2 or 3 eaten. He actually caught a couple of them and won the tournament. Damn it.
And how deep are you fishing?
100 fathoms, 600 feet. And, my buddies in Oregon Inlet that are charter fishing, I'm like, what is it you're seeing? What's eating them? He's like, take your pick. He said, it is a cornucopia of large sharks, every type of shark, hammerheads, tigers, black tips, bulls, duskies. We actually caught a dusky that day. A dusky shark looks just like a bull shark. It does not have a ridge between its fins. That's how you tell the difference. They're protected, and they're huge. They get huge. They get close to 1,000 pounds, but there's just masses of these, and that never was the case. That really opened my eyes when I saw that. That was, that's going back probably 4 or 5 years. I saw that and I was like, good Lord, that, we got a problem. Again, it all started with the government getting involved, telling people to go catch them. Everybody went and caught them, wiping them out. Now they're trying to protect them. It's a noble gesture, but it's again, government inefficiency and government hubris and not listening to the guys that do it every day. And now we've got an imbalance and we've got a problem.
Well, it's no, this is our first, fishing episode, we'll call it, podcast that we've done. But, it's no different than managing big game species, whether you're in the U.S., you're in Canada, you're in Africa, all around the world. Predators are necessary to maintain a proper balance in an ecosystem. So you have to have some. Now, if you talk to a Colorado rancher right now, he's going to tell you something totally different. And, that's when, good intentions, I think,
right.
There's repercussions.
Well, again, it goes back to doing, fisheries or resources, outdoor resources based on pulling on people's heartstrings, not on science.
Right.
The wolves, with the Colorado thing, were coming back on their own. But
yeah, Joe Rogan actually had a biologist on, a wolf biologist.
I listened to it.
She was fantastic. And one of the things she dispelled, there's the myth out there that these wolves that were introduced are a different hybrid species that were up north and they're, 5x large or whatever. She dispelled all that. That's not true. Genetically, they're the exact same wolf that existed there, and they would normally migrate and move around, and they were coming back on their own before they reintroduced them. And of course that she loves wolves and that's her thing. But, you talk to the farmers there and the depredation they're seeing now. And, when there's no season, this is kind of what happens. And it's hard.
And it was immediate.
Yeah.
When they let those wolves go, it happened to me. I also saw somebody was talking, I can't remember what state it was, Minnesota, maybe it was Wisconsin, where they opened up a season. People were up in arms. They wanted to kill 900 wolves.
Yeah.
And people were like, oh my God, it's a massacre and this and that. Well, I think they killed 80. And they were like, these things are so smart that once you kill a couple, they adjust, and so it's out of control.
Well, it's kind of like you may mention earlier the bear season here in Florida, right? Where we had a supposed number of bears in the state of Florida. I'll throw up the date on the screen because I can't remember exactly, but there was X number amount of bear that they wanted to take. They opened the season on a Saturday, and we're going to have it run for 2 consecutive weeks. And I think the first Sunday they had to close it because there was
they had already surpassed
the number that they wanted to take, which just goes to show you there's more bear than they thought there were. It's not that they're better hunters.
But that's the logical answer is, oh my goodness, there's so many bears. We got our quota in 2 days or whatever it was. But people were like, oh my God, they massacred. They were killing cubs, they were killing mothers that were suckling cubs. Well, first of all, that was a lie. But I mean, it's nonsense. People lose their minds when they get all, touchy-feely about it.
That's the Greenie. We call them Greenies, right? There's leftist tree huggers, so we call them Greenies. They, and I had, I don't know if you saw the post that I went back and forth for almost a week on the Outdoor Trader app, where I had a couple of them found the post.
Oh, that was entertaining.
Yeah. Those guys.
The comments are the best.
Yeah. Just here for the comments, folks. Just gonna sit here and watch. But those guys are there. There's no science to back up anything they say. It's 100% passion and emotion based. So they're easy to. I mean, you can really get them pissy in a hurry. And, unfortunately, and not unfortunately, for somebody like us at Salt Lake, it drives traffic.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, comment stupid. They think they're standing up for what's right, or they're better than them. And then you throw, I can't kill anything, and you're horrible for doing this. I'm like, where do you think your meat comes from? Are you a vegan? Do you not eat meat at all? I eat meat. Where the think it comes from? Somebody killed that piece of meat.
So I'll tell you a good story about that. So there at Pirates Cove in Stewart, where I had my boat, there was a fella there, and I knew him for a long time. He did marine electronics installs and stuff. Nice guy. I never used him, but, I had my guy I used. Would always be very polite and cordial to him. And you remember those little Atlantic sharp-nosed sharks we called them white dotters. They were about, 2 feet long, 3 feet long. I mean, that's a full adult shark, and you were allowed 2 per person, and we rarely kept them, but occasionally people would want to keep them, and you can't eat them. We would gut them right away because, other than, I don't know, a lot of people may not know this, but other than Makos, whites, poor beagles, and threshers, sharks pee through their skin. So that's when you throw a shark in a box and you get that ammonia smell in there, that's what that is. And it's kind of nasty. But so we would gut them immediately.
Shark piss in your box. Yeah.
Right?
I'm out.
In your mouth.
Ooh. Even harder pass.
So anyhow,
that's definitely making a reel, by the way. Shark piss in your mouth. Reel number 1.
But so anyway, so this guy walks behind the boat. I'd see him every day, and the gal that owns the place there. I've known her and her husband for a long time. And she came up to me shaking her head and she's like, "Leave it to you." I said, "What? What did I do now?" He went and made a complaint saying that I should be kicked out of the marina because I'm low class for killing baby sharks. Right? So, as you can imagine, next time I saw him, I had a couple of words for him.
No, not you.
No, I was bad upbringing, something. But anyway, so it's just horse hockey, man. It's terrible, and people think that their heart's in the right place, and it's hard to argue when you look at this Discovery Channel, which now I used to love Shark Week. The kids and I would sit down and watch it. It's garbage. It's all fake now. It's ridiculous. I always like the ones where they have the divers down there and they're talking to each other, but they just have regular masks on them. Like, how are they talking to the regular?
That doesn't work, by the way.
But anyhow, so, another thing, I keep mentioning the Mako shark, and growing up in Long Island, and Mako sharks were very close to my heart. It's the first big game fish I ever caught. They jump like a marlin. They're delicious to eat, and they're just beautiful, purple and fierce and snow white bellies. And we can't keep them anymore. And you can thank Mr. Guy Harvey, who I dare you to find somebody who fishes that didn't at one time have a Guy Harvey shirt. The very people that made that man wealthy, he turned on and basically became Judas. And he did a bunch of research in Isla Mujeres in Mexico with Mako sharks and convinced National Marine Fisheries to protect Makos. Basically, Makos have the same federal protection white sharks have right now. It's a no take. And at first, you used to be able to catch Makos and kill Makos any size. I mean, gosh, I got one on my wall that's 5 pounds, that was killed years ago in a boat I was working for. And the guy made me a copy of it. I wanted to let it go. In fact, we were in first place in releases in the White Marlin Open. And I said, let this thing go. We're going to let it go. And no, put him in a box. We want to mount it. And I was like, man, that's bad. And John Bayless, who's Bayless Boat Works now, he was running the Hatteras Company boat. And we were in the lead on Friday. The fishing was terrible the last day. We had finished on Thursday, so we were charter fishing on Friday, and I never smiled so big to have a bad day of fishing, because back then the first place boat got money, a little bit of money, not like they do now, but we got this like Super Bowl ring, man. I was gonna rock that thing, and old Bayless, he was 2 fish behind us, so he had to catch 3. At about 2:00 in the afternoon, he calls in a fish, and I was like, too little, too late, buddy. And next thing you know, he's like, hey, stand by. So he had a second fish. I'm like, no problem. We got him on time, and then sure enough, he had a triple, and took the ring right off my finger. And now he's a client of mine. I do, with my company now, I supply his company, and I remind him of that all the time.
She's dirty bad.
But anyhow, yeah, so the Makos, I mean, phenomenal eating fish, great game fish worldwide. And now, so we were told we're going to close it for 2 years. And everybody got behind that. We said, no problem. That's fine. And to be honest with you, when I was a kid catching a Mako, I remember like it was yesterday. I'll show you a picture of me on the phone. I was, 12 years old, caught my first Mako shark. It's on my wall now, that old mount. It was a defining moment for me. It kind of shaped me. And to me, it's just an iconic fish, and it is worldwide, whether you're in New Zealand or wherever you are, deep in my heart, I knew that there was something rotten. When the ruling came out, it didn't say 2 years. It said until further notice. And, not to be cynical, but hey, you fish long enough, you become cynical, but I doubt we'll ever get that back.
Because there used to be Mako tournaments like on TV.
Oh, 100%.
And stuff. And they would fish out of California, and they would fish out of like New Jersey and stuff like that. But they were like, I remember growing up watching Mako tournaments.
Absolutely. So now, I'll give you another example. A good friend of mine lives in Long Island, keeps his boat in Montauk, and he just loves bluefin tuna fishing. And they were blessed this summer with phenomenal tuna fishing, very close to the inlet there. And he caught, fish up 900. He was letting most of them go. Again, they're not worth, don't believe that crap on TV. They're not worth $2 a pound. And he doesn't need the money like that. So he was just he and his family would go out there, would catch them and let them go. He said the last day he fished, and they were using live bluefish for a lot of those, and 4 or 5 pound bait. He said the last day he fished in the fall, he went through 6 Mako sharks up to like 400 pounds before he finally got a tuna bite. There's plenty of those things, and I was lucky enough to fish in the Azores in the Eastern Atlantic in September, and they are rank over there. I mean, right teaser, Mako, get it out of the way, and you pull it out of the way. Same thing in the White Marlin Open in Ocean City this summer. We had a Mako try to eat the dredge. That was almost an expensive bite. Poor thing, he did try to eat it. He didn't even get a bait off it. I kind of felt bad for him. But anyway, the
Yes.
point is, you're seeing them all the time. There's more Makos now than when I was a kid in the 80s. And now they're protected. And I'm all about conservation, but again, it's bad science. Guy Harvey came to a tournament and was touting about how proud he was for that, and people booed him off the stage in the Bahamas. The economic impact from Virginia Beach to Cape Cod, those guys lost a month and a half of business now because nobody wants to go shark fishing and just let them all go. Blue sharks aren't good to eat, and the only really thing you can keep that would be able to be eaten would be a thresher shark, and you can't count on those. The Mako was the big draw. So, it's had economic impact on the blue collar charter fishermen and longliners now that still catch them. They just got to cut them loose dead. I mean, that's not good to anybody.
And that's endemic of not only sport fishing, but also hunting too. You've got those same kind of policies and regulations that are being made, and who's it hurting at the end of the day?
That's right.
Yeah,
every time.
Yeah, it's not just the blue collar folks that are out there doing it. It's the charter captains and the outfitters that you're putting out of business because you're making these stupid laws and regulations without any science to back it up.
For sure.
It's the bleeding heart liberal thing. And yeah, I feel bad. Okay, sure. If I see that shit TV, that's the problem though. They cherry pick the worst of the worst to show you. They don't show the good that goes back into it. Think about all the money that goes back into the offshore projects, making reefs, building fisheries and habitat based on the money that you're spending and your clients are spending. Right? They don't talk about that.
Nope.
They only talk about the bad. Well, it works both ways, right? That's an open door that it swings both ways. If you talk about one, you got to talk about the other. There's always a good with a bad. But, that's my problem. And there is some things I used to bitch about, say, let the science speak for itself, right? Problem is, if it's bad science,
Right.
that's the problem. Like you talked about, dropping the pots for the snapper and stuff earlier, right?
In the desert.
Yeah. And I know exactly where you're talking about. I spent lots of time there. There's nothing there. I'm talking a grunt. If you want to catch a grunts?
No, they're not. There's not even there. The only time I ever stopped there was a sailfish tail, and we stopped and pitched a bait and caught him. And I was laughing. I was like, "Well, I'll never come here again." It's like there's nothing there. There's not unless there would be like a hard current edge with weeds and stuff in it. You wouldn't stop there ever. You certainly wouldn't bottom fish there,
right?
But and it's bad science, So you tell me how a sea turtle gets a straw up his nose in the water. That's what I want to know.
Feel the world will never know,
right? one cocaine addicted sea turtle ruins my Flanagan's drink for 5 years. I'm sorry.
Paper straws, what a fucking horse.
Paper straws in a plastic container. Way to go, liberals.
Well, so so moving on from here, though, I mean, obviously, you obviously have an opinion about it. So, in your opinion, let's go back to the snapper thing, right? After Oscar gets him a fresh drinky drink, and I don't have to try to edit all that.
Sounds like a good brine.
It does, right?
Yep. Schley.
Hence the need for the.
He's getting just the right one.
The mini fridge, right?
Reach for the bottom, Oscar. Get the one on the bottom.
Bush Light Peach, baby.
That's nice. They make those for men?
Yeah, I don't think so.
For this guy.
They only come in women's sizes. No, Mike Sumner, if he was here, he'd be having one with him, though.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. So going back to, all right, let's go back to the red snapper thing. So what can people do? I mean, obviously, I think that the general consensus among recreational fishermen on the East Coast and commercial fishermen is like, hey, you got to open the up. But how is that going to happen?
Yeah. So, just to be clear, the commercial fishery is open longer. They do have a little bit more quota, but it's still not much. My take on it would be to do what they did in the Gulf is the states get together, and maybe Florida and Georgia, South Carolina, because Southeast Fisheries goes all the way up to Outer Banks, get together and do some data, and that's what the Gulf states did. And they were able to change that, for the recreational side. And now there's a real recreational fishery. I mean a healthy fishery. Some of the guys, I have a deer lease in Alabama, and some of those guys have a boat down there in Orange Beach, and you got to see the fish they're catching. Good golly. I mean, I saw 3 over 30. One of them was 38. I mean, it was so big, it was grotesque. It wasn't even shaped like a snapper anymore. It was just giant fish. They have a good, healthy fishery. All over from.
That one would be on my wall.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I fished a day with a friend in Grand Isle, and he fished 4 electric reels in like 350 feet of water, and with like stringering all these red snappers, and just, venting and letting go the smaller ones and only keeping the biggest ones. And we didn't keep a limit because he didn't even want to do that, but it was just stupid. We did that for 2 hours and went sword fishing. It's amazing, the biomass, but we have that here too. And the issue here locally, because where we are, Palm Beach, we would see red snappers once or twice a year in the deep spots. But from Stewart North, you can count on it. Like, if you, like you were saying, if you're in the know, and a lot of the.
And do you is that because the stream's so much further out before you get to it, or it's just
part of it? It's a temperature thing,
Mhm.
But you Key West, you get to Key West, you go to the West and the Gulf, and they get them there too,
Right.
But
in super shallow water there too.
They do sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
They do sometimes. The red snapper season, incidentally, in state waters is open, but you rarely see a red snapper in state waters here. And then that's I believe, I may be wrong on this, been out of the fishing for a couple of years, but I think it's 20-inch minimum, so it's got to be a pretty good one. And we catch juveniles inshore quite a bit, but but the most of the reds for us are in federal water, and so that's the jurisdiction, But golly, there's plenty of them. I mean, you talk to we could go all the way up the coast, all the way up to Hatteras, and talk to these guys about not being able to catch other stuff because of the red snappers.
Oh, and I sold my boat a couple of years ago now, but even
Congratulations.
Yeah, right. 2 happiest days of a boat owner's life. But and I think you and I talk on the radio when we were out there, and if you're having a slow bite, I'd call you in something or vice versa, because that's the thing, everybody tries to work together.
Sure.
But we get out there and you'd go to a spot, all right, listen, we're going to tear the lanes up here. I've got some people, we're going grocery shopping, right? And get there, and it's red snapper, son of a bitch.
Yep. And they're there. The other stuff's there.
Yeah.
Just the red snappers they're pretty stupid.
Yeah.
Like a mutton snapper is a pretty smart fish. You got to use light leaders, long leaders, and try to. The red snapper, it's like, just put a chicken rig.
Chicken
on
rig.
It. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're gonna eat it. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
They're not too bright. And
your lanes, your vermilions, your that. Yeah, you're going grocery shopping, but all you're bringing in, like I said, what's chicken rig, and it was so bad in spots. You'd get that first good bite, and you'd hook the fish. Keep that rig in the water. Let's see if we can get another one hooked up. And you'd bring up a couple at a time.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
no doubt.
And it's just so I think something's definitely got to be done. So folks, write your congressman or your senator and see if you can get them involved. But then, then going on to the shark thing. So, I was going to tell a short story about that I witnessed firsthand. We, years ago, Oscar, I don't know if I ever told you the story or not. Mike and I, we used to go, my first like real fishing experience in the Bahamas was with Mike. And this was, might have been a dozen years ago now. There's actually pictures on the wall we were looking at earlier from like before we even had this office. So this, we've had this office since I think I said 2018. So, before that, we were taking people, and I met Mike, and, my first real Bahamas fishing experience, not a fly over there, take a charter boat, but actually go over there just to fish with Mike. And, we had a great time, and, I've learned so much from Mike over the years, and it kind of just, drilled that passion for offshore fishing into me. But so, years later, and I bought a boat, and we would kind of buddy boat and go back and forth over and take, his family would go on one and my family would go on another. We always had this thing. We'd run out to Memory Rock the last day before we left and try to get into that yellowtail bite, or, the snapper bite was pretty good there. Hogfish too. There's lots of stuff there.
Yeah.
And Mike Sumner happened to be with us that time, and young Emmett was little at the time, so Emmett was a little bitty. He could see over the gunnel, but he wasn't very big. And we got into a great bite. You anchor up, you chum out, and got a good bite. And then Mike, and this was like the third different time he moved, and we're within 400 or 500 yards of each other, right?
Yeah.
You jump around a little bit, and he finally had enough. He got sharked one last time. And I look over, and he was taking his rod and just smashing the shit out of it on the gunnel. And I looked over at Sumner, and he's grabbing the rig. I'm like, don't you do it, Sumner. Don't. He's like, I gots to. I'm like, don't do it. He's like, I gots to. And he's like, hey, Cap, having a little shark problem over there. And Mike's just wearing this rod and reel out.
So I got to tell you a little backstory on that. But we set up there and we started chumming and throwing some silver sides. And my biggest advice with yellowtailing is don't be in a rush. You have to build life, get your chum going, and you'll start seeing little barjacks and stuff and start chunking and stuff, and silver sides and get everything going. And right away we had these big yellowtails coming up. It's like, oh man, look at that. I mean, not exactly a yellow brick road, but handfuls of fish, and they were giant.
Flags.
The biggest one we kept that day, my mate Alex caught it. It was 26 inches long. It was the biggest one he ever caught. Like, he had never been to the Bahamas. I'm like, come on, we're going to go take the family. He came and he was just over the moon with it. And there was a couple back there, and I just dismissed them as yellowjacks because they were so big. But as they got closer, they were giant yellowtail. I mean, we're talking 6, 7, 8 pounders, giants. And finally got one of those jokers to eat, and you know what happened. So incidentally, this ties into our little talk today. Where we were is right close to what they call Tiger Beach, where they feed the freaking tiger sharks. And the whole deal with that place is you got to move around, because once the sharks find you, you're done. So we would catch a few, move. Well, some of these tigers, their heads were as wide as this table. They had to be granders, and sure enough, we hooked one of these giant things, and
Well, and somebody told us so we would go to Grand, and somebody at Grand, we were sitting down for dinner one night, and I was talking to him about the shark thing, and like, oh yeah, well we don't chum, we just go out there and we drop the cages and let the people. Poor, I've seen that boat firsthand, and they've got a chum line slick.
Did you hear what happened last week in Bimini? At the Big Game Club in Bimini, which is the main marina where everybody goes there. There were 2 girls. I don't know whether they were teenagers or 20-something, young girls on a yacht out at the end of the dock, and they went and they hung their feet over the swim platform of the yacht. Well, they both got bit. Now, as of like the last 10 years, somebody has put a shark cage at the marina, and you could pay to go. And so you damn sure, they're the marinas in the Bahamas are all real bad with sharks, and every fish cleaners, including Grand, every fish cleaning station is just, tons and tons of.
Well, when we go to Double Breasted, right? We pull the boat up on Double Breasted, and you got all the stingrays, and they clean the fish while you're sitting there having a beer in the water. You got the stingrays, which is probably stupid, but then all the sharks would start coming in too. And I've got a lot, and I'll overlay some of the shark footage too that I've got, because I would dive with the sharks then, and take a GoPro around and film it. When you first get there's nothing. And as soon as they start cleaning fish, within a few minutes, the sharks come in, and they are thick.
You talk about that learned behavior too. Double-breasted, strangers, all that stuff. Back when I was fishing for a living, we would go there to spearfish because it's far enough away. There'd be bigger hogfish. It'd be up shallower, and you never had a problem. So we would never spearfish on a fallen tide, because when you shot a fish, that would take the scent of that fish out off to the edge, and eventually they would come. So we'd always spearfish on the incoming or at top of the incoming. Now, the minute you get in that water, they're there. And I'm not talking about just a shark happening to pass by. I'm talking back arched, pecks down, that aggressive, like, hey, you're competing with me, get out. And I know some people that have been almost bitten. One guy actually got bitten by these sharks without a fish. And
well, and I've had to beat them off with a GoPro before, with the long handles. So I would get, I'd start, we'd kind of beach the boat and then the swim platform off the backside. And you've got your Bahamian friends there that are cleaning the fish and chunking them out. So when you get back by the outboards or by the inboard on that swim deck, where all the sharks and everything, they get territorial in a hurry. They'll 100%. Start coming to you, and you've got to, you pop them in the nose with the GoPro to get them to go away. But and these are small sharks too. I'm talking about, 3 and 4 foot sharks. I'm not talking about anything massive, but but instantly they're there. Like, you're right. That's a learned behavior.
Well, those little 3 and 4 foot Caribbean reef sharks are very fast.
Yeah,
and you're a long way away from getting help.
A long way.
Yeah,
away. Rosie ain't fixing to call nobody to get in there in a hurry, if there's even power or cell phone service.
He's gone now. He passed away.
Yeah.
May he rest in peace.
Yeah. Well, is the daughter running the place now?
What I call it that. I think his son, Jeremy, his son is taking over. So, Walker still doesn't have any buildings there, but yeah, it's like I said, right at the dock there. There's giant bull sharks right there at Rosie's at the dock. So
Yeah, and that's a good fishery too. It's close for people on the East Coast. They can run over there. We
oh
always
yeah,
we made the run the Grand. Lots. We'd like to go to Grand, and really good fishing there, especially when you get on the outside, right? When you get further east, you get some deep water pretty quick too. And then
oh yeah.
even on the other side, Old Bahama Bay, you can get out there in some deep water and get into the tuna bite pretty good too.
Well, remember the trip you and I took? We were the first people there after that hurricane. Oh my gosh! So we go over there and we get there and we clear in at West End. We get our conch salad and everything, and we get back out. And I said, "Come on, we're going to fish for a little while." And I mean, wahoos and tunas and mahis, and I'm like, "Good Lord!" And I called. We were staying at Blue Marlin Cove, and I called them, and they were pissed. They were like, "Where are you at? We want to go home." And I was like, "Guys, we got to go in and go get our rooms, man. We were sleeping on the boat."
And we were catching. So Mike was in the tower, right? And Alex was on deck with me, but it was just cast left, cast right. It was my, and then just instantly everything was blowing up, and we caught hell. It was a ton of fish.
We were like, there's Old Bahama Bay to the left. There's Blue Marlin Cove to the right, 3 miles away. It was like we were right out front. I was like, oh my.
In shallow water too. We were. The shore felt like. It was 1,000 yards probably, but it wasn't any further than that kind of thing. Yeah. And we got into that bite, and it didn't matter what, everything was in.
That was fun.
Good times. And then
Teddy was there.
Teddy's
a pleasure.
Teddy was there. Yeah.
He said not to mention him today. That's why I want to mention Teddy. Shout out to my business partner, Teddy.
Oh, Rubskin. I miss that guy.
Yep.
We're going to be seeing him shortly, though, on the Guatemala trip.
Yep.
Oscar, that's something you should go do with us. That is a trip you would really, really enjoy.
Got a lot of things happening this year.
It doesn't take much, dude. Don't make an excuse. There's no rewind.
That is true.
Getting married and all that.
Teddy caught it. He's got a beautiful mahi, big dolphin mounted over his desk that I did for him after last.
Sasete.
Yeah. Really nice fish. That
he got all over too.
That's what I was gonna say. Great bite. You got the video of that thing airing out and everything. Teddy caught it, and we were all taking pictures. It's a big fish when the mates want to take a picture with the fish, right? So everybody was passing it back and forth, taking pictures, and then Teddy's like, "Oh, let me have it one more time." So he's sitting on a gunnel on a transom, and he's holding this big dolphin, and this thing shit more than any fish I've ever seen. Like I've seen humpback whales shit, and they might not have been shitting as much as this fish, and he had no idea. And so we're all staring at him, and we must have had horrific looks on our faces. He says, am I doing something wrong? And I'm just with my camera going, nope. You look great, pal.
The shadow. It's the sun. You got to turn the other way a little bit.
It was on the deck. It was on, and his shorts made like a little bowl. Oh, it was so awful. So awful. It was so bad that when I brought the mount into his office, he looked at me and said, "You push a button and that thing's going to the wall." I said, "No, but now that you say that, I wish I'd have thought of that."
And that's, Oscar, from a hunting perspective, you've seen it now in South Africa when you, like with your kudu, right? And everybody comes out, every tracker, every scanner, everybody wants to take a picture of it. That's the kind of dolphin that he caught that day.
Yeah.
It was just one of those things.
How big was that kudu? 55 inches?
No, it was 51.
But that's an Eastern Cape one.
Yeah.
Mine was 42. It was almost on video, but somebody didn't turn the camera on.
Oof, bad cameraman.
I was 70 yards behind him, still crawling on my belly with like 2 cameras and a bunch of shit. No, it's true.
Listen, first day.
I've got the interview on camera. Does that count?
I was in front of you, and look at me. Do I look like I'm in shape?
You didn't have 2 cameras?
Dude, the funniest thing was Simon. Simon looks at me and goes, "Can you climb this fence?" And I was like, "Raggedy Ann got caught. I want to kill that damn kudu." I got up on the top of this chicken wire fence, and I'm like, maybe I spoke too soon.
So that's a conversation we have with people. They say, yeah, well, you're hunting high fence. So we were hunting low fence area.
That was in the farm. It was a farm.
This was a low fence farm, but what they did is they had a big pivot, and it was high fence to keep all the animals off the pivot. Well, we watched these come out of the mountains. Dude. They would go right next to the fence, not even run and start. The male kudu would back up like this and go straight over a 3-meter high fence. Clear.
Yeah. This fence was so tall. I couldn't reach top of it with my hand up over my head. And this son of a gun just stopped and looked at it and was like, right over the top. Unbelievable.
I think people really think they're like, oh, I can't jump that. I'm like, yeah, well, you're not a
no kidder.
But there, I don't know how many pounds a kudu weighs. He's got to be 800-ish is my guess.
Small elk, really.
Yeah. They're like 300-400 pounds.
No, it can't be, because a water buck weighs 500 or 600.
I think
right.
I think water bucks are denser.
Yeah.
Well,
body Like that's what the big chicks say. No, I've got big bones. I'm not that.
You got those huge bones in your knee.
All right, so before we wrap this up,
this is devolving quick.
no, this is when all the good happens right here. This is when we get in trouble, piss everybody off. What do you guys? So you've just met Mike for the first time today, and which is weird because you and I have been friends for several years, but Mike and I have been friends for over a decade now. And fished and hunted everywhere together. So, glad to finally get you two to hook up. And y'all just missed out. You were in Africa, and then he came on the next side of the trip, so you missed him there. But we definitely got to do this again. Especially, we'll definitely fish because it's a lot easier for us to fish than it is to obviously go to South Africa. And that's the thing. You're going to miss him this year too because he's coming on the first leg of the trip, the bow hunt trip. So the day you land, he's already there at the gate waiting for his flight to leave.
So you're going with John?
Yeah.
Yeah, gotcha. That's cool.
Well, me and Gabby are going before. I think John's coming a couple days later.
John's going to be 2 days later or something, but it is what it is. But yeah, so what do you got? I mean, so, Mike's he's as big a fisherman as you are, right? So before, when I first met you, there was some hunting there, but it was fish. And
I think it's just easier to go fishing. Like my parents would just drop me off at a causeway when I was 14 years old. And like, I'll pick you up 6 hours later.
We've never had Oscar's story on camera. Tell us your story because you're not originally from the U.S. So
no, I'm originally from Peru.
Yeah, well, tell us your story, buddy. I mean, I don't want to tell it all for everybody.
No, I'm originally from Peru. Came here when I was 5. Parents immigrated over here. And then, I grew up fishing Dania Beach. That's when I first started fishing. Me, my dad, and my uncle, and my cousin would go there, and we just fish all day, catching blue runners and stuff like that. I think I've probably lost 4 or 5 rods, just being a little kid, looking over the thing, and just be like, "Oh, look, a fish," and just dropping my rod in the water.
The history, the royalty of sport fishing history is from Cabo Blanco, Peru.
I've heard like the crazy stories. And everything, like all the world records that have come out of Peru and stuff like that. I think world record swordfish is out of Peru.
Oh, that's a Quique Chile, but the world record black marlin by 1,560 pounds was caught by Alfred Glassell there. It's like there was a 1,530, the women's world tackle record. All at this place, there was an oil thing there, but that's all gone now. The same thing, they kicked out the bottom rung. They caught all the anchoveta. They got rid of all the bait. Now there's still some fish there, and they're trying to revamp it, but I mean, Ernest Hemingway and Ted Williams, and I've got all these books I got to show you. It's just awesome. It's incredible fishery, all kinds of stuff.
I remember I had dinner one time with the president emeritus of IGFA, and we just spent like one whole night just talking about fishing in Peru and stuff.
Was it Mike Leach? Was it?
No, it was
George Matthews. Oh, okay. He's from Jersey.
Makes him a bad guy instantly, huh?
He ain't nothing but a Jersey shark.
But Oscar, you've got family that are still in the hunting business there, right?
Yeah, there is. Yeah, my uncle is still there. My uncle was basically helping with like running like the Peruvian FAA and everything.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So he would go out and then be like, his job was to go to like rural airports and like make sure that everything was up to code and everything like that. And then he'd be like, well, this whole thing's going to take me. I'm in deep jungle. And this thing's going to take me 3 days. I'm just going to make this into a 10-day thing.
Right.
And we would just go into like the Peruvian Amazon and just go out and just like legit like pack like 5 pounds of salt. Pack 5 pounds of salt and like enough water and Sunny D.
Sounds awesome.
Tampico. And then
Tampico, that's right. Yeah. That's the real
and everything. And just like with shotguns, and me and my cousin would just go around the Amazon, just like, like shooting caiman and
that's awesome.
All kinds of crazy stuff.
That's awesome.
Jaguar
and stuff. Yeah. Like, yeah. And everything. My uncle's, game room in his house, the entire border of his house is, anaconda skin.
Oh,
so
really?
It's all just bordered in like anaconda skin.
I love to have a pair of anaconda boots.
Yeah. And everything. And then like, we go.
That's how you know you made it as man in life. If you can wear anaconda to work in.
He met this guy on there that was just like lived in the middle like nowhere, Amazon, and guy like had like a bunch of crazy like was one of those guys that like he's like, oh, I'm in this business, this business, this business, this business, and he would take like Japanese researchers to go look for like medicinal plants and things like that in the Amazon. And like they would like,
Yeah, because I'm sure coca is hard to find there.
and they would find like they're just like they found like whatever like beetle is used for like blue dye and everything that came from like one of his explorations, and they would just go out
That's cool.
and like find like things that like, oh, never seen this butterfly, and like the natives and stuff would be like, oh yeah, this butterfly only lives like one day out of the year.
That's pretty awesome.
Like all kinds of like crazy stuff. And
Talk about a family legacy, huh?
yeah. yeah.
It's cool to have that cat in a family
Right.
tree.
And like the trips were like, okay, we're gonna go from here. All right, we're gonna go, we're gonna hop in the trucks and go 8 hours, and then 4 hours by boat, and then bushwhack another 3 hours. And then you're in like virgin jungle. They're just like, nope. I remember like bushwhacking through the Amazon, and we came out on this like crazy, like pristine, like beach, and there was jaguar tracks everywhere and everything. And then we came up on this like little lagoons, probably 4 or 5 acre lagoon, and there's like dugout canoes and everything. They're just like, oh yeah, that's like those people that live here. Like these
Wow.
are
That's pretty cool.
yeah, all kinds of crazy stuff.
Sumner tells us a story about when they used to fish Brazil when it was more attainable, and I think the Amazon Queen I think was the boat
Yep.
they used to go on. They used to pull little bass trackers behind it and chase all those peacocks and everything. But I've always wanted to do that. But I mean, where did your so I understand where you started fishing, but you've got like this passion for fishing. Even when it's weird. So we go to South Africa for the first time, right? And he meets the lodge manager, Chad, and he and Chad instantly connect, and it has nothing to do with. It's about fishing. So the entirety of his first, what was like 12 days in South Africa or whatever, that's all they did is talk about fishing the whole time he's in South Africa.
You need to go tiger fishing, man.
I want to. And,
I'm going next year. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he was like telling me his like crazy stories of like fishing the beach in South Africa and everything. He took the president of like Rapala fishing and all kinds of crazy stuff.
You know who fishes a lot is remember the PM at Hunters Hill, Nippy?
Yeah, Nippy.
Nippy goes and hunts
Mozambique, I think.
fishes on the beach, and they've got some cool fish. I mean, they got one that it's basically like a big giant sea trout. They call it a cob, or they call it a Jew fish. But
well, we met a bunch of guys. I got it on camera. I haven't been through the footage yet. So we stayed when we were at KwaZulu-Natal this year when we were hunting in the sand forest for the Sunni and red diker. We met a bunch of guys that were there on holiday, not hunters but big sport fishermen. And where we were apparently is like a fishing mecca. So we're as far to the the northeast as you can go without crossing the border. And these guys are talking about, oh my God, and showing me pictures. He's like, this is like a morning fishing for us kind of thing. And it's just the fishing out there. And what the that thing? I've never seen one of those before. And what is that? He's like, yeah, we catch them all the time. It's nothing. It's easy. They're garbage fish. We don't even worry with those anymore.
Oh yeah, no, he was telling me all the names of these fish and like whatever, and I'm just like, I've never even heard of this fish.
Got one called, I think it's called the Steenbras. It's like this big, looks like a giant porgy on steroids, like a big snapper, really cool looking fish, like pinkish fish. But it has some cool stuff.
Well, and I was sitting there, so I had Hannes with me, obviously, and Quibus, and we start talking about fish, and I look over at them, and these two guys, I don't know, they've even seen water before much, and unless it's time to go to the East London to pick up somebody at the airport, and they get to see the ocean, but they don't know about it. But it was fun. It's just those stories and those memories we make, along the way, and we've got, and I harp on it, we've got a bond. It's hunters and fishermen. It's really easy for us to bond with other people. We're very like-minded, and it's easy, for us to talk. And that's a great thing about kind of being in this industry is while there are some out there, the majority of the people are good folks, and they're there and they're doing it for the right reasons. And I think we get labeled too much as hunters and fishermen as just the trophy hunter thing or the trophy fisherman thing, where we're just out trying to kill something, we leave it there. That's never what happens, and people don't understand that.
Yeah. No, exactly.
Yeah, that's what the leftists use. When somebody does do something stupid, they'll go shoot a white-tailed deer and then lop its head off and then leave the carcass on the road. Something stupid like that. Well, that we can do great for 30 years as an industry and as a community, and it only takes one mistake to for everybody. That goes back to the whole bridge builder thing, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, you can build 1,000 bridges in your life, and
Yeah.
never you suck one loud dick, and you'll always be known as a.
I mean, yeah, we hate those guys too. Guys like I know guys that shoot hogs and just take the back straps and that's it. I'm just like, why?
It's a terrible waste. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you get an old nasty boar hog or something, I get that. I mean, there's not much you can't eat the thing.
Yeah, but I'm always like someone could use it. You know what I mean? Like someone can use it and everything like that. You know,
Like Elisa in Alabama, there's a bunch of guys on the dirt road, and they've always said, "Bring me whatever."
Well,
So-
and you've seen what happens in South Africa. You harvest an animal, and the gut pile from a kudu is that big. Everything else, there's some bones in there can't use. The rest of it, everything gets used. But I went off to hunting again instead of fishing. But yeah, so wrapping things up. I mean, I think this is a definitely a good conversation, and we definitely got to do it again.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. All right, folks, that about wraps it up. We've covered red snapper. We've trashed on NOAA and Guy Harvey. We've talked about sharks acting like entitled freeloaders, and somehow Mike managed to make it through an entire episode without breaking something expensive. So I'd like to call that a win, needless to say. And if you've enjoyed today's episode, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, and share it with your buddies, unless your buddies are NOAA regulators, in which case they can go. A big thank you to my co-host today, Oscar Maldonado, who's probably already, you're well over halfway through that six-pack by now, I think. And to our guest, Captain Mike Murray, somehow, once again, made sense of both the fishing and hunting industries, as always, while the rest of us are just trying to keep up. So be sure to check out Mike in the upcoming South Africa Unleashed series. You will see him again soon, coming from South Africa. If he survives it, that is. Until next time, folks, keep your lines tight, your beers cold, and remember, if the government regulated beer the way they regulate fishing, we'd all be making moonshine in our bathtubs. See y'all next time on Salt Lick Outdoors Worldwide, and Oscar, try not to get us banned in the first 10 minutes next time.
I'll try not to.
All right. Appreciate it, guys.
Take care.